The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked through them, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and clean. His boots made no sound on the polished floor as he moved toward the center of the room. Behind him, Commander Paul Bennett followed quietly, carrying a small datapad. The chamber was huge. 7 towering seats rose from the floor in a circle, each one designed for a different alien species. At the highest point sat Council Prime Veltar, a Zephyrian with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His large black eyes looked down at Morrison without emotion. The other council members watched from their seats, some with interest, others with what humans might call disgust. Morrison had been in this room many times before. Usually he came here to discuss trade agreements or solve disputes between species. Today felt different. The air seemed heavy, and none of the council members had greeted him when he entered. That was never a good sign. Ambassador Morrison, Veltar spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. Thank you for coming so quickly, Morrison nodded once. Council Prime, you said this meeting was urgent. Indeed it is. Veltar's 4 hands moved as he spoke, a habit of his species. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's place in galactic civilization. Something cold settled in Morrison's stomach, but his face showed nothing. He had been a diplomat for 20 years. He knew how to hide his feelings. I see. Please continue. Council member Thexana leaned forward from her seat. She was a Krillian with pale green skin and sharp features. The Council has voted, Ambassador. The vote was unanimous. Morrison waited. He did not ask what the vote was about. He already knew it would not be good news. Veltar stood up from his seat. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council and all associated organizations. Your species has proven too dangerous and unpredictable to remain part of civilized galactic society. The words hit Morrison like a physical blow, but he did not move. Behind him he heard Bennett take a sharp breath. Morrison kept his eyes on Veltar and said nothing. You want to know why? Thexana said. It was not a question. Very well. We will tell you. She activated a holographic display in the center of the room. Images began to appear, showing various incidents from the past few years. Morrison recognized most of them. 3 years ago, Thexana began, your Captain Lisa Hayes interfered with lawful Krillian mining operations on Gorvani Prime. She helped the Gorvani workers escape their contracts. The Gorvani were slaves, Morrison said quietly. They were contracted workers, Thexana snapped. The arrangement had existed for over 300 years. It was legal under galactic law. The hologram changed to show another scene. 2 years ago, your Dr. Emma Blake made contact with the crystal beings of Lumina 7 without proper council approval. She treated them as if they were sentient. They are sentient, Morrison replied. That determination is made by the council, not by individual humans, said another council member, a hegemony representative with gray skin and no visible mouth. His words came from a device on his chest. Your species consistently ignores proper procedures. More images appeared. Human ships helping refugees. Human doctors treating species that the council had classified as non-priority. Human traders dealing with worlds that were supposed to be isolated. Human explorers going beyond the approved boundaries of known space. You see the pattern, Veltar said. Humanity refuses to follow the established order. You make friends with species we have determined are primitive or dangerous. You question decisions that have maintained galactic peace for millennia. Morrison watched the images cycle through. Each one showed humans doing what they thought was right, even when it went against council rules. He felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. The final incident, Thexana continued, was the Gorvani uprising last month. Your Captain Hayes not only helped them escape their contracts, she provided them with weapons and ships. An entire mining operation was destroyed. Valuable resources were lost. Valuable slaves were freed, Morrison corrected. Contracted workers, Thexana insisted. And now they have declared independence from the Krillian Empire. 3 centuries of legal agreements gone? All because humans cannot follow simple rules. Veltar raised one of his hands for silence. The Council has been patient with humanity. We welcomed your species when you first achieved faster-than-light travel. We shared our technology and knowledge. We gave you worlds to settle and trade. Agreements that made your people wealthy, Morrison nodded. All of that was true. The Council had been generous when humanity first joined the galaxy. But generosity has its limits, Veltar continued. Your species is a disruption to galactic order. You encourage rebellion in species that were content with their place. You question authority that has existed since before your world developed. Life, you are dangerous. We help people, Morrison said simply. You help the wrong people, Vexana replied. The Gorvani were content as workers. The crystal beings were better left alone. The refugees you saved were exiled for good reasons. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Morrison looked around at the 7 council members. Some of them seemed uncomfortable with what was happening. Others looked satisfied. None of them met his eyes. The decision has been made, Veltar announced. Humanity has 1 standard galactic year to remove all citizens, ships, and installations from council space. After that time, any human presence will be considered an act of war. Morrison felt Bennett step closer behind him. His aide was probably waiting for him to argue, to demand a hearing, to make some kind of diplomatic protest. That was what any other species would do. Instead, Morrison straightened his uniform jacket and looked directly at Veltar. We understand, he said calmly. Humanity will comply with the Council's decision. The silence that followed was complete. Several council members exchanged glances. This was clearly not the response they had expected. You accept the expulsion? Asked the hegemony representative, his mechanical voice sounding surprised. The Council has made its decision, Morrison replied. We respect that decision. Veltar's forearms moved nervously. There will be no appeals? No requests for reconsideration? Morrison shook his head once. No, Council Prime. If the Council believes humanity is too dangerous to remain, then perhaps it is best that we leave. More glances were exchanged among the Council members. Vexana leaned forward in her seat. You seem remarkably calm about being expelled from galactic civilization, Ambassador. Morrison almost smiled but caught himself. My people have survived. Worse things than exile, Council member, we will adapt. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at the Council. There's one thing I would like to say. Speak, Veltar said. The Council has taught humanity an important lesson today. We have learned that following the rules is more important than doing what is right. We have learned that maintaining order matters more than protecting the innocent. We have learned that some species are worth more than others. Morrison paused, looking each council member in the eye. These are valuable lessons. We will remember them. Without another word, Morrison turned and walked toward the exit. Bennett followed, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. The massive doors slid open again, and both men disappeared into the corridor beyond. Behind them, the council members sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Veltar spoke. That went better than expected, he said, but his voice did not sound convinced. Too well, Vexana muttered. I expected them to fight the decision. Humans are unpredictable, said another member. Perhaps they simply recognized that resistance would be futile. Perhaps, Veltar agreed. But as he looked at the empty space where Morrison had stood, he felt a strange unease. Something about the human's calm acceptance bothered him, though he could not say exactly what. Outside the chamber, Morrison and Bennett walked through the station's corridors without speaking. Other species moved around them, going about their daily business. None of them knew that they had just witnessed the beginning of the end of galactic civilization as they knew it. Only when they reached their ship did Bennett finally speak. Sir? What do we do now? Morrison looked out at the stars through the ship's viewport. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of council space, lay humanity's future. Now, Paul, he said quietly, we go home and pack. 6 months had passed since the council's ultimatum. Captain Rick Stone stood on the observation deck of the transport ship Liberty Bell. watching the last shuttle leave New Montana Colony. The small ship carried the final group of human families from the planet they had called home for 30 years. Below them, the colony looked strange and empty. Houses stood with their doors open and windows dark. The gardens that human settlers had planted were already beginning to grow wild. In a few years, there would be little sign that humans had ever lived here. "That's the last of them, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Ross from behind him. "All civilians are aboard the transport fleet. We can leave whenever you're ready." Stone nodded but did not turn away from the window. "Any word from the other colonies?" "New Texas finished their evacuation yesterday. New Beijing will be done by tomorrow. Captain Helen Park reports that her refugee fleet is running ahead of schedule." Stone finally turned around. Lieutenant Ross was young, maybe 25 years old. She had been born on New Montana and had never seen Earth. This was the only home she had ever known. And now she was being forced to leave it forever. "You okay?" "Lieutenant?" Stone asked. Ross tried to smile. "Yes, sir. It's just hard to leave, you know?" Stone understood. Most of the humans in the outer colonies had been born there. They were not leaving Earth behind. They were leaving the only homes they had ever known. But orders were orders, and the council had been clear. All humans had to go. "Sir," called out Ensign Frank Lopez from the communications station. "We're getting a transmission from the surface." Stone frowned. "From the surface? Everyone should be evacuated by now." "It's not from humans, sir. It's from the Malari village on the southern continent." Stone and Ross exchanged glances. The Malari were one of the native species on New Montana. They were peaceful, intelligent beings that looked something like large, furry otters. The council classified them as a primitive species, but humans had always gotten along well with them. "Put it through," Stone ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a Malari named Keth. Stone had met him several times during trade negotiations. Keth's large, dark eyes looked worried. "Captain Stone," Keth said in accented but clear English, "is it true? Are all humans leaving New Montana?" "I'm afraid so, Keth. The Galactic Council has ordered us to leave." Keth's ears drooped, a sign of sadness among his people. "But why? Humans are our friends. You taught us about medicine and farming. You helped us build schools for our children." Stone felt a familiar anger rise in his chest. The council had never cared about species like the Malari. They were too primitive to be worth the council's attention. But humans had seen their potential and had helped them learn and grow. "The council believes it's for the best," Stone said carefully. He did not want to say what he really thought about the council's decision. "Captain," Keth said, leaning closer to the camera, "my people have talked. We do not want you to leave. And we do not want to stay here without our human friends." "What are you saying, Keth? We want to come with you, all of us. Our entire village, maybe our entire people." Stone stared at the screen. "Keth, that's a big decision. Are you sure?" "Very sure, Captain. We have learned much from humans. About friendship, about helping others, about being more than what others expect us to be. We do not want to forget these things." Stone looked at Lieutenant Ross, who nodded encouragingly. "How many of your people are we talking about, Keth?" "Our village has 3,000 members, but I have been talking to other villages. Maybe 15,000 Malari want to leave with the humans. 15,000 refugees," Stone thought quickly. The transport fleet had extra space since they had been built to carry more people than originally planned. It would be tight, but they could manage. All right, Keth, if your people really want to come, we can take you. But you need to understand something. We're leaving council space entirely. We're going to worlds beyond the galactic rim. It will be dangerous, and there's no going back." Keth's ears perked up, a sign of excitement. "We understand, Captain. We trust humans. Wherever you go, we want to go too." After the transmission ended, Stone turned to Ross. "Get me Admiral Carter on the command ship. He needs to know about this." While Ross worked at the communications station, Stone looked back out at the planet below. This was not the first time something like this had happened. Reports had been coming in from human colonies across the galaxy. Other species were asking to leave with the humans. "Sir," Ross called out, "I have Admiral Carter." The screen changed to show Admiral John Carter, a stern-faced man in his 60s. Behind him, Stone could see the bridge of the command ship Washington. "Rick," Carter said, "I hear you've got some passengers wanting to join our little exodus." 15,000 Nolari, sir. They want to come with us." Carter nodded. "You're not the first to report this. Captain Williams on the Ohio says 12,000 Gorvani refugees want passage. Commander Hayes on the Defiant has been contacted by 3 different species asking for transport." Stone was surprised. "How many aliens are we talking about, Admiral?" "Current estimates are somewhere around 200,000 beings from 47 different species. All of them want to leave Council space with us." "Sir, do we have room for that many refugees?" Carter smiled grimly. "We'll make room, Captain. These beings chose to trust us over the Council. The least we can do is get them safely to our new home." After the call ended, Stone began preparations for the Milari evacuation. It took 3 days to transport all 15,000 beings and their belongings to the human fleet. The Milari traveled light, bringing mostly personal items and some of their traditional artwork. As the Liberty Bell finally broke orbit around New Montana, Stone received another surprise. Lieutenant Ross approached him with a datapad and a confused expression. "Sir, you need to see this. We're getting requests for passage from other species. Not primitives like the Milari. These are from Council species." Stone looked at the datapad. Request after request scrolled down the screen. Young Zephyrians asking for passage off their homeworld, Krillian scientists who wanted to continue working with human researchers, even some hegemony citizens who claimed they were tired of their government's rigid control. "How many?" Stone asked. "So far, about 3,000 individuals from various Council species. Most of them are young adults or professionals who have worked closely with humans." Stone shook his head in amazement. When the Council expelled humanity, they probably expected humans to slink away quietly and be forgotten. Instead, humans were taking pieces of galactic civilization with them. "Sir," called Ensign Lopez from his station, "we're receiving a message from the Council observation post. They want to inspect our ships before we leave the system." Stone was not surprised. The Council had been watching the human evacuation closely. They were probably curious about why human ships seemed to be carrying more cargo than expected. "Tell them we'll allow the inspection," Stone said. "We have nothing to hide." An hour later, a Council inspection team beamed aboard the Liberty Bell. The team was led by a Zephyrian named Kexrun, who immediately began scanning cargo holds and passenger areas. "Captain Stone," Kexrun said, looking at his scanner readings, "your ship appears to be carrying more passengers than originally reported." "That's correct," Stone replied calmly. "We have 15,000 Milari refugees aboard." Kexrun looked confused. "Refugees? From what?" "From you," Stone said simply. "They asked to come with us rather than stay under Council rule." The inspection team spent several hours aboard the ship, checking passenger manifests and cargo lists. They found exactly what Stone had told them: humans, their belongings, and a large number of refugees from various species. "I don't understand," Kexrun finally said. "Why would these beings want to leave?" "The Council provides them with protection and guidance." Stone looked at the Zephyrian inspector. "Maybe you should ask them?" Kexrun did exactly that. He interviewed several Milari and was clearly puzzled by their answers. The Milari spoke about friendship, about being treated as equals, about learning new things and being encouraged to grow. These were concepts that did not translate well into Council thinking. After the inspection team left, Stone called together his senior officers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I think we're about to learn something interesting about the galaxy." "What do you mean, sir?" asked Lieutenant Ross. Stone looked out at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of Council space, humanity would build new homes, and they would not be building alone. "I mean," Stone said, "that maybe the Council just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They didn't just exile humanity. they exiled everyone who believes in what humanity stands for. As the human fleet moved toward the galactic rim, they carried with them not just humans, but representatives from dozens of species. Beings who had chosen freedom over security, friendship over rigid order, and hope over fear behind them. In Council space, the first cracks in galactic civilization were already beginning to show. Dr. Zextel stood in the emergency medical center on Krillian Prime, staring at the reports scattered across his desk. 3 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared beyond the galactic rim, and the galaxy was falling apart. The Vorthan plague had started small. A few cases on a mining world called Zarian 9, then it spread to a trading station, then to 3 more worlds. Now it was on 47 planets across Council space, and nothing they tried could stop it. ZX. Single quotes. Tal picked up the latest report from the medical team on Hegemony Central. 23 million dead in just 2 weeks. The virus was unlike anything they had seen before. It attacked multiple species differently, changing its structure as it spread. Traditional vaccines were useless. "Doctor," called his assistant, a young Krillian named Thelmos. "The Council Medical Committee is asking for your hourly update." Zextel looked at his assistant with tired eyes. "Tell them the same thing I told them last hour. We need Dr. Alan Foster." "But sir," Dr. Foster left with the human fleet. "He's somewhere beyond the rim." "I know where he is," Zextel snapped. "That's the problem." Zextel had worked with Dr. Foster for 12 years. The human doctor had been the lead researcher on galactic disease prevention. Every major medical breakthrough in the past decade had come from Foster's laboratory. The protocols they used to fight diseases, the vaccines that protected billions of beings, the emergency response procedures, all of it had been developed with human expertise. When the humans left, they took Foster with them. They also took Dr. Nina Chang, who had been Foster's research partner, and Dr. Marcus Webb, who ran the Galactic Medical Database, and Dr. Lisa Park, who managed the Emergency Response Network. The Council had never bothered to keep backup copies of the medical research. Why would they? The humans were always there to solve any problems that came up, until they weren't. "Sir," Thelmos said quietly, "there's something else. We just received word from the Kutari system. The trade dispute with the Hegemony has turned violent." Zextel closed his eyes. "How bad?" 3 Hegemony ships destroyed. 2 Kutari stations attacked. Both sides are calling for Council intervention. Another problem that humans used to solve. For 50 years, human diplomats had mediated disputes between the Kutari and the Hegemony. The 2 species hated each other, but they trusted human negotiators. To be fair, without humans to keep the peace, old hatreds were bubbling to the surface. "Have we heard from Ambassador Chun?" Zextel asked, then caught himself. Ambassador Chun was human. "She had left with the evacuation fleet months ago." "No, sir," Thelmos replied. "The Council is trying to mediate the dispute themselves, but neither side will accept Zephyrian or Krillian negotiators." Zextel was not surprised. The Kutari had always been suspicious of the Council's major species. They believed the Council favored the older, more powerful civilizations. Only human diplomats had been trusted by all sides. A communication alert chimed on Zextel's desk. He activated the screen to see Council Prime Veltar's face appear. "Doctor," Veltar said without greeting, "what is the status of the plague research?" "The same as it was yesterday, Council Prime. We cannot replicate Dr. Foster's work without his research notes. The virus continues to spread." Veltar's 4 arms moved in agitation. "Surely our own medical experts can solve this problem." Zextel tried to keep his voice calm. "Council Prime, with respect, Dr. Foster was the galaxy's leading expert on viral mutation. His research methods were unique. We're trying to reverse engineer decades of work with incomplete data. How long before you have a solution? At our current rate of progress, maybe 2 years, maybe 5, maybe never." The silence on the communication line stretched for long seconds. Finally, Veltar spoke again. "What about contacting the humans?" "Directly?" You mean ask for their help? I mean demand their help. The medical crisis affects the entire galaxy. Surely they have some responsibility to assist. Zextel had been wondering when someone would suggest this. Council Prime, we expelled them from galactic civilization. We told them they were too dangerous to remain among civilized species. Now we want to ask them for help? It's a temporary measure, Veltar said quickly. Emergency assistance only. And you think they'll agree to help? Veltar's face showed uncertainty for the first time. They're humans. They're supposed to be compassionate. They helped everyone else. After the call ended, Zextel sat alone. In his office, thinking about the humans he had known, Dr. Foster had been a kind man, always willing to share his knowledge and teach others. He had worked 20-hour days during the Krillian fever outbreak 5 years ago, refusing to rest, until he found a cure, but Foster had also been proud. He took his work seriously and did not like to be insulted or dismissed. How would he react to a request for help from the same council that had called his people dangerous and expelled them from the galaxy? 3 days later, Zextel received the answer. The council had sent a formal message to human territory, requesting medical assistance with the plague. The response came back faster than anyone expected. Message received. We understand the situation. No assistance will be provided at this time. That was it. No explanation, no negotiation, no counteroffer. Just a flat refusal. Council member Thexana called an emergency meeting. Zextel attended via hologram along with other experts from across council space. The meeting room was filled with angry voices. How dare they refuse to help, Thexana declared. Billions of beings are dying. They're being vindictive, said another council member. This proves they were too emotional to be part of civilized society. Maybe we should threaten military action, suggested a hegemony representative. Veltar raised a hand for silence. Before we make any threats, we need to understand our current position. He activated a galactic display in the center of the room. Red zones marked areas affected by the plague. Yellow zones showed regions with civil unrest. Blue zones indicated economic problems. As you can see, Veltar continued, the plague is only one of our problems. Trade networks are failing. Diplomatic agreements are breaking down. Several species have declared independence from council authority. Zextel studied the display with growing alarm. The Mimilari had cut all contact with the council after humans left. The Govani had formed their own government and were refusing to honor mining contracts with the Krillian Empire. 17 other species had declared neutrality and were no longer participating in council decisions. The economic situation is also deteriorating, Veltar added. The Krillian Empire is facing revolution on 6 worlds. The Zephyrian Trade Federation has lost 40% of its shipping contracts. Our currency is becoming unstable. How is this connected to the humans leaving? Asked the hegemony representative. Veltar looked uncomfortable. It appears that humans were more integrated into our civilization than we realized. They weren't just members of our society. They were essential to making it work. Analyst Krendok, a Zephyrian economist, stepped forward. I've been studying this problem for weeks, he said. Humans weren't just good at medicine and diplomacy. They were the social connectors that held our civilization together. He activated his own display, showing a network of connections between species. Look at this trade relationship between the Outer Rim colonies and the core worlds. It only worked because human traders served as intermediaries. The colonies didn't trust council merchants, but they trusted humans. The display changed to show diplomatic connections. Here's the peace treaty between the Vorthan clans and the Eastern Alliance. It was negotiated by humans and has been maintained by human peacekeepers for 30 years. Without them, both sides are preparing for war. More examples appeared on the screen. Scientific collaborations that depended on human researchers. Cultural exchanges managed by human diplomats. Economic agreements that required human banks and financial experts. Humans had a unique talent, Krendok explained. They could work with anyone. Species that hated each other would both trust humans. Primitive cultures felt comfortable learning From humans, advanced civilizations respected human innovation. Dexano looked angry. Are you saying we can't function without humans? I'm saying we structured our civilization around their abilities without realizing it. When we expelled them, we didn't just lose one species. We lost the species that made cooperation between all other species possible. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They had not just made an enemy of humanity. They had removed the foundation that held galactic civilization together. There's something else, Krendok added quietly. Our intelligence reports suggest that humans aren't suffering in exile. They're thriving. What do you mean? Veltar asked. The species that left with them are building new colonies in rim space. They're establishing trade networks, sharing technology, and creating new forms of government. Reports suggest they're happier and more prosperous than they ever were under Council rule. That's impossible, Vexana protested. Those species were primitive. They needed our guidance. Maybe, Krendok said. Or maybe they just needed someone who treated them as equals instead of subjects. As the meeting ended, Zextal returned to his medical center with a heavy heart. Outside his window, he could see protests in the streets. Citizens were demanding action on the plague, but there was nothing the council could do. Admiral John Carter stood on the bridge of the human flagship Liberty, looking out at the newest addition to their growing fleet. The ship approaching was not human-built. It was a Zephyrian merchant vessel called the Star Wanderer, and it carried 300 refugees fleeing the chaos in council space. Admiral, reported Commander Steve Walsh from the communications station. Captain Valinix of the Star Wanderer is requesting permission to dock. He says his passengers are seeking asylum in human territory. Carter nodded. Permission granted. Have Dr. Blake prepare the medical teams. These refugees have been traveling for weeks. 1 year had passed since humanity's exile began. The small fleet that had left council space had grown into something much larger. Humans had established 3 major colonies in the rim territories, and more ships arrived every week, carrying beings who no longer wanted to live under council rule. Sir, Walsh continued, the Star Wanderer's captain is also carrying official messages. He says several council governments want to communicate with us. Put those messages in the queue, Carter replied. We'll read them after we take care of the refugees. Carter had been receiving messages from council space for months. Some were demands for humans to return and solve various crises. Others were offers of new trade agreements or special status within council territory. A few were outright bribes, promising humans anything they wanted if they would just come back. He had ignored them all. The docking bay doors opened, and Carter watched the refugees file out of the Zephyrian ship. Most were young beings from various species, carrying small bundles of personal belongings. They looked tired and scared, but also hopeful. Dr. Emma Blake met them at the docking bay. She had been the xenobiologist who first made contact with the crystal beings of Lumina 7. Now she served as humanity's refugee coordinator, helping newcomers adapt to life in human territory. Welcome to New Geneva Station, Blake told the refugees in Galactic Standard Language. You're safe here. We'll provide food, shelter, and medical care. No one will force you to do anything you don't want to do. Carter saw relief on many faces. These beings had grown up under council rule, where their place in society was determined by their species classification. In human territory, they would be judged by their actions, not their biology. Later that day, Carter called a meeting with his senior staff. The conference room aboard the Liberty was crowded with human officers and alien advisors. Captain Rick Stone was there, along with Commander Helen Park and several others who had led the exodus from council space. Let's start with the latest intelligence reports, Carter said. Steve, what are we hearing from council space? Walsh activated a holographic display showing the known galaxy. Large sections of it were now marked in red. The situation continues to deteriorate, Admiral. The Vortham plague has spread to 73 worlds. Death count is approaching 2 billion beings. Carter felt a familiar weight in his chest. 2 billion dead because the council was too proud to properly ask for help, and 2 incompetent to solve problems without human expertise. The economic situation is even worse, Walsh continued. The Krillian Empire is facing full revolution. 8 of their core worlds have declared independence. The Zephyrian Trade Federation has collapsed entirely. Most of their merchant fleet has been destroyed in riots. The display showed ship movements across the galaxy. Where once there had been orderly trade routes connecting hundreds of worlds, now there were only scattered clusters of activity. What? About the diplomatic situation? Asked Captain Stone. Complete breakdown, Walsh replied. The Kutari hegemony conflict has escalated into open warfare. The Vorthan clans are fighting among themselves. The Eastern Alliance has split into 6 separate governments. Blake leaned forward in her chair. How many refugee ships are we expecting this week? 15 confirmed, maybe 20, Welsh answered. Word is spreading that human territory offers safety and freedom. More beings are making the journey every day. Carter studied the display showing human territory. What had started as a few small colonies was now a growing confederation of worlds. Humans, Milari, Gorvani, and dozens of other species were working together to build something new. What's our current population? Carter asked. Approximately 8 million humans and 4 million aliens, Walsh replied. The alien population is growing faster than the human population. At current rates, they'll outnumber us within 2 years. Some of Carter's human officers looked concerned, but Carter was not worried. The aliens who came to human territory shared human values. They believed in cooperation, freedom, and treating all beings with respect. Numbers did not matter as much as shared principles. Admiral, interrupted Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez from the door. We're receiving an urgent transmission from Council Space. It's marked as priority emergency. Carter looked around the room. Put it through. The holographic display changed to show Council Prime Veltar. The Zephyrian leader looked older than Carter remembered. His skin was pale and his forearms moved nervously. Admiral Carter, Veltar began, I am contacting you directly because the situation in Council Space has become desperate. Carter said nothing, waiting for Veltar to continue. The plague has reached core worlds, Veltar continued. Zephyrian, Prime, Krillian Central, and Hegemony Alpha are all affected. Our best estimates suggest we could lose 50 billion beings if we don't find a solution soon. Still, Carter remained silent. We know that humanity has access to advanced medical research, Veltar pressed on. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for assistance with the plague. What kind of compensation? Carter finally asked Veltar. Relief was visible. Full restoration of human citizenship in the Council, preferred trading status, territorial grants in the Outer Rim, seats on all major committees. Carter almost smiled. The Council was offering everything they had taken away, plus more. A year ago, such an offer would have been considered generous. Now it seemed insulting. Council Prime, Carter said calmly. You expelled humanity from galactic civilization because you considered us too dangerous to remain among civilized species. Has something changed? The situation is different now, Veltar said quickly. We were perhaps too hasty in our judgment. You were quite certain at the time. You said humanity encouraged rebellion among species that were content with their place. You said we questioned authority that had existed for millennia. You said we were dangerous. Veltar's arms moved faster. Yes, but we now understand that these qualities also had value. Your species brought stability to the galaxy in ways we didn't appreciate. So you want us to return and use our dangerous qualities to save the Council from the consequences of your own decisions? Admiral, please. Billions of beings are dying. Carter stood up from his chair. Council Prime, let me ask you something. Among those billions who are dying, how many are Milari? How many are Gorvani? How many are from the species you classified as primitive or worthless? Veltar looked confused. I don't understand the relevance of that question. The relevance. Carter replied, is that those species are safe? They're here, in human territory, protected by the same medical advances you're asking us to share. They're alive because they chose to leave Council space with us. That's not the same thing, Valtar protested. The populations in Council space are much larger. And much more important to you, Carter finished. You didn't care when primitives died. You only care now that civilized species are threatened. The communication line was quiet for several seconds. Finally, Veltar spoke again. What do you want, Admiral? What would it take for humanity to return? Carter looked around the room at his human officers and alien advisors. These beings had built something together. They had created a society based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. They had proven that cooperation was possible without domination. We're not interested in returning to Council space, Council Prime. We're building something better out here. Better? Veltar sounded genuinely confused. You're living on primitive worlds at the edge of the galaxy. You have no infrastructure. No established trade networks, no advanced technology. We have freedom, Carter replied. We have beings who trust each other. We have a society where everyone has value, regardless of their species or origin. That's worth more than all the technology in Council space. Admiral, please reconsider. The offer of full Council membership is still open. Carter shook his head. Thank you, but no. We've learned something important out here. Council Prime, it's easier to build a new civilization than to fix a broken one. Then you'll let billions die for the sake of your pride? We'll let billions face the consequences of their leaders' choices, Carter corrected. The Council created this crisis by expelling the people who could have prevented it. You made your decision. Now live with it. Carter nodded to Walsh, who cut the communication link. The room was silent for a moment. Sir? Asked Captain Stone. Do you think we made the right choice? Carter looked back at the display showing their growing territory. Ships from dozens of species moved peacefully between human colonies. Refugees found new homes. Children grew up learning that all beings deserved respect. We made the only choice we could live with, Carter replied. The Council wants us to save their civilization while keeping their prejudices. 2 years after humanity's exile began, Admiral John Carter stood in the war room aboard the Liberty, staring at intelligence reports that changed everything. The galaxy was no longer just collapsing from internal problems. Something far worse was coming. Show me the data again, Carter said to Commander Steve. Walsh. Walsh activated the holographic display. Dark shapes appeared at the edge of the known galaxy, moving inward with purpose. Our long-range scouts detected them 3 days ago? We estimate 47 ships, all of unknown design. Captain Rick Stone leaned forward to study the display. Any idea what they are? We call them Void Hunters, Walsh replied. That's what the refugees from the Outer Rim have been calling them. They attack without warning, destroy everything they find, and move on. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. How many worlds have they hit? 17 so far? All in the Far Rim territories. No survivors. Dr. Emma Blake spoke up from her seat at the table. Admiral, we've been monitoring communications from Council space. They know about the Void Hunters too, but they don't seem to understand the threat. What do you mean? Blake activated another display showing Council fleet movements. They're treating this like a normal invasion. They're sending patrol squadrons to investigate using standard defensive protocols. And those protocols were designed for fighting other Council species. We helped develop most of them. Without our tactical input, they're using strategies. That won't work against an unknown enemy. Carter understood the problem immediately. For decades, humans had been the galaxy's military innovators. They were the ones who developed new tactics, who thought outside traditional patterns, who found creative solutions to difficult problems. The Council had never bothered to learn these skills themselves. Sir, interrupted Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez, from the communications station. We're receiving another transmission from Council space. It's from Council Prime Veltar again, Carter sighed. This would be the 7th message from the Council in the past month. Each one more desperate than the last. Put it through. Veltar's image appeared on the main screen. The Zephyrian leader looked terrible. His skin was gray, his forearms trembled, and his large black eyes showed pure desperation. "Admiral Carter," Veltar began, his voice cracking. "Please, you must. Listen to me. The situation has become catastrophic." "I'm listening, Council Prime." "The beings you call Void Hunters have destroyed 3 more core worlds. Krillian Secondary and Hegemony Beta are completely gone. 15 billion beings dead. In just 2 days? Carter felt sick. Even though he was angry with the Council, he did not want to see innocent beings die. "Our fleets cannot stop them," Veltar continued. "Every time we engage, we lose ships and accomplish nothing. We need human tactical expertise." "What exactly are you asking for?" Veltar's desperation was clear in his voice. "Full command authority for human forces. Admiral, we're prepared to place all Council military assets under your direct control." The war room fell silent. Captain Stone looked. Shocked, Dr. Blake raised her eyebrows. This was not just an offer of cooperation. This was surrender. "You want humanity to take over galactic defense?" Carter asked. "Yes, complete authority. You can reorganize our fleets however you think best. We'll follow your orders without question." Carter studied Veltar's face. A year ago, this same being had called humanity too dangerous to remain in civilized society. Now he was begging humans to take control of that same society. "Council Prime, let me make sure I understand. You want the species you exiled as dangerous and unpredictable to take command of all galactic military forces?" "Yes," Veltar said without hesitation. "We were wrong about humanity. We need your help." Carter looked around the room at his officers. These were good people who had spent 2 years building something better than the Council. They had created a society based on cooperation and respect. Now they were being asked to save the civilization that had rejected them. "Give us 12 hours to consider your offer," Carter said. After the transmission ended, Carter called an emergency council meeting. Not just his military officers, but representatives from all the species living in human territory. Malari, Gorvani, former council citizens who had chosen exile over oppression. Everyone who would be affected by this decision. The meeting lasted 6 hours. Voices were raised, arguments were made, and difficult truths were spoken. In the end, the decision was unanimous. Carter opened a channel to council space. When Veltar's face appeared on the screen, Carter could see hope mixed with fear in the alien's eyes. "Council Prime," Carter began, "we accept your offer. But there are conditions." "Anything," Veltar said quickly. "Name your terms?" "First, all species currently in human territory will be granted full citizenship in whatever government emerges from this crisis. No species classifications, no hierarchies based on biology." "Agreed." "Second, the current council structure will be dissolved. In its place, we'll establish a galactic confederation where all member species have equal representation." Veltar hesitated. "That would require completely restructuring galactic government." "Yes, it would. Do you agree?" Yes, agreed." "Third, any species that wants to join this new confederation must do so voluntarily. No forced membership, no coercion." "Understood." "Is there more?" Carter nodded. "Yes, we're not coming back to save your civilization, Council Prime. We're coming back to build a new one." 3 days later, the largest fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace above Nexus Prime. Human ships led the formation, but they were joined by vessels from 37 different species. Milari science ships, Gorvani battlecruisers, refugee vessels converted to support roles, and even some council ships whose crews had declared loyalty to the new confederation. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the flagship New Earth, a massive vessel built in the Rim territories using combined technology from multiple species. As the fleet approached the council station, she opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Hayes of the Galactic Liberation Fleet. We're here to help." The battle against the Void Hunters lasted 3 months. Admiral Carter used tactics that no council military leader had ever considered. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on with superior firepower, Human forces used speed, deception, and coordinated attacks by multiple species working together. The turning point came when Dr. Blake discovered that the Void Hunters were not actually alive. They were ancient machines, programmed to destroy what they perceived as threats to galactic stability. The Council's rigid hierarchical society had triggered their programming, marking the galaxy as a target for elimination. Working together, human engineers and alien scientists developed a way to reprogram the machines. Instead of destroyers, they became protectors, turning their advanced technology toward exploration and defense against external threats. When the war ended, Ambassador Jake Morrison found himself once again in the Council chamber on Nexus Prime, but this time, the room looked different. The 7 towering seats had been replaced with a circular arrangement, where representatives from 53 species sat as equals. Morrison took his place among them, representing not just humanity, but the new Galactic Confederation that had emerged from the ashes of the old Council. Next to him sat Keth, the Malari leader who had been among the first to follow humans into exile. Across the circle sat a reformed Veltar, now serving as one voice among many instead of as supreme leader. The first order of business, Morrison announced, is the Refugee Integration Act. All beings displaced by the recent conflicts will be offered citizenship in Confederation worlds. The vote was unanimous, as was the vote on the Species Equality Amendment and the Freedom of Movement Resolution, and dozens of other measures that would have been impossible under the old Council system. After the session ended, Morrison walked to the observation deck of the station. Through the great windows he could see ships from across the galaxy coming and going freely. Human vessels worked alongside alien craft, former enemies collaborated on joint missions. Children from different species played together in the stations. Parks, Veltar approached and stood beside him. Ambassador Morrison, the former Council Prime said quietly. I owe you an apology, Morrison nodded. Yes, you do. When we expelled humanity, we thought we were protecting galactic civilization. We didn't understand that you were galactic civilization. Morrison looked at the alien who had once called his people too dangerous to remain among the stars. We weren't the only ones, Veltar, but we were the ones who remembered that civilization. Isn't about maintaining order? It's about helping everyone become better than they were before. And now? Morrison smiled as he watched a group of young beings from 6 different species, working together to repair a damaged freighter. Now we get to find out what the galaxy can become when everyone gets a chance to contribute. Outside the windows, the stars shined with new promise. Humanity had walked away silently when the galaxy rejected them. They had returned not as conquerors, but as builders of a better tomorrow. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.